Today, we're going to be talking all about nutrition. We're going to be talking about counting calories, fat adaptation, and cramps, which probably we've triggered half the audience already on just those three topics. So it's going to be a great one. We have with us our head coach, Chad Timmerman. We have Squid Bike's Ivy Audrey, and we also have a special guest with us today, Alex Larson from Alex Larson Nutrition. First time on the podcast. Good to have you, Alex.
I know. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
We saw your reels on Instagram and you reached out, and it was funny because you reached out, but I had seen your reels in my Explore, a couple of days before that too, it was quite serendipitous. Can you explain or just introduce yourself really quickly for the audience so then they know who's talking?
Yeah. So I'm a registered dietitian. I hail from Duluth, Minnesota. So up where we have an epic amount of snow right now. And my background, like athletically, is I was really into triathlons before my husband and I started our family. And when I started my career as a dietitian, sports nutrition wasn't really even on my radar as a career, but it was the moment that I crossed the finish line at Ironman Wisconsin in 2014 when I truly experienced how vital nutrition can play into your endurance performance. And so at that point I said, you know what, I think I want to help other athletes do these types of things. And so that's where this whole my work really stemmed from. And now I just have the pleasure of getting to work with amazing athletes from around the world on helping them fuel for whatever epic events they want to do.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we picked questions that all of you submitted at TrainerRoad.com/podcast, and we picked specifically nutrition ones because Alex is with us. So we're going to talk about those. We have some non-nutrition stuff too. But Gino's question, first one, says, I was in a race and started cramping. Against my better judgment, I took a fireball hand up. The cramp went away within 2 minutes. When they came back 20 minutes later, I took another fireball hand up and they went away again. Could fireball be the holy grail elixir that endurance athletes have been seeking to eliminate cramps all these years? And what properties in fireball might contribute to cramping relief? Ivy, you are a pro cross racer. Can you corroborate this theory here?
Yes. I think we should make a clarification of what fireball is, because I think there may be athletes outside of the U.S. that don't know what fireball is, which it is cinnamon whiskey. Those are generous terms. I don't think there's any cinnamon, maybe not even whiskey in it. Who knows? It's poison.
It's rubbing alcohol.
Spicy rubbing alcohol poison. Yeah. But I think that what Gino is experiencing is something I've experienced too, in taking what I thought was maybe like a water hand up, or and then you drink it and you find out that it's not water or something alarming. And I think it's akin to just getting like cold water thrown on your face or a slap in the face, where there might not be any sort of biological effect that removes cramping or makes you feel better, but it's a jarring enough or surprising enough taste / smell or, otherwise experience that it just kind of snaps you out of whatever physiological, painful state you're in, and just kind of deflects what you were feeling before into something new and alarming. So
perhaps more alarming than the cramps.
Yeah. So I've experienced this with other sorts of flavored rubbing alcohol poisons, margarita mixes, bacon in alcohol hand-ups, like vile stuff, and really just being alarmed enough to distract you from cycling pain isn't curing your cramps. It's just distracting you. But if it works,
so far what I'm getting from this is if I went into cycling, that I would get drunk really fast.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm just such a lightweight. But like pickle juice shots would be another common one you might see people doing as well. That would just like trigger that like nervous system to kind of solve that cramping so quickly like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like about distraction of that nervous system, right? And getting it away from that. That's why Chad and the famous hot shots story we've told on the podcast multiple times.
I don't think it served as enough of a distraction. I mean, it clearly didn't.
It didn't. And it caused a separate one of vomiting later on. So
adding nausea to the mix. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it did distract you, I guess, in that regard. So that part was accomplished. Yeah, it's common. I mean, that's why I prefer on long rides and races, like at Leadville when Chad was crewing for me. At one point, Chad, I had like little baggies of things, and Chad put a baggie into my pocket, and it had candied ginger in there. That's like something that's not vile, disgusting, spicy rubbing alcohol, like I said. It's also not like pickle juice and a sort of flavor that just will not get out of your like mouth later on. It's just something that's, very strong and somewhat spicy in flavor, but it doesn't cause too much issue. And in most cases, I don't swallow it or anything like that. I just chew on it for a bit, and distracts me, and I spit it out. So, but I mean, I've tried everything. I've tried biting like a hole in my cheek. I've like done whatever I could to try to get rid of a cramp in a crucial time in a race before. Distraction doesn't solve it. Chad, you've covered this. We've covered this ad nauseum, right? But at the same time, some basic quick guidelines for people if they are experiencing cramps that isn't Fireball.
I think the most reliable information that we've gleaned so far is just has to do with being underprepared physically or physiologically. You're just outpacing your current capabilities by a lot usually. And I can think I was a pretty religious cramper. It happened just about every event in one way or another. And I can trace almost all of those instances back to coming into it underprepared in one manner or another. I mean, I may have had fitness, but I didn't have 7-hour fitness. I may have had good 90-minute fitness, but I outpaced even that on the day. So it always comes back to, at least in my case, and I think across athletes, it's pretty common that if you just haven't done that thing and you subject yourself to that thing, you greatly increase your likelihood of cramping.
Yeah. Well, and when you talk about being underprepared, right, Alex, it's also on the nutrition front. Like you can have everything, you can be trained to the nines, but if you deprive yourself of the fuel to do it, you're going to cramp, right?
Yeah, if you have chronic cramping issues, it's likely going to be a hydration, electrolyte, and fueling issue. It could be one of them. It could be all three. So before you start like bringing Fireball or hot shots or pickle juice, whatever it is, like out on your rides, like let's figure out your nutrition first to rule all of that out. If you're depleting your glycogen stores too much, you're just like pushing through that fatigue. If you're dehydrated, that's going to cause cramping very easily. And then electrolytes too. I mean, I've seen some athletes that are pretty salty sweaters that need a good amount of salt to support the amount of hydration that they're doing. And so those would be the first things that I would look at for sure before even going into those fun, exciting things that are epic stories to tell like later on in life. I mean, I had a gravel cyclist last year who told me, he goes, in all my races, I usually have some sort of cramping at the end of a race. And we looked at hydration, electrolytes, fueling, dialed that in. And all of 2022, he didn't have any cramping issues. And he's from North Dakota, and he did a really hot race in Texas, and he didn't even cramp during that. So that's saying something.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think Alex Wild, oh boy, I'm going to butcher this one. But he was telling me the other day, I think that he just got tested, Alex, regular co-host on the podcast. I think he loses 2,100 milligrams an hour of sodium, like extremely, extremely salty sweater.
Wow.
Which is crazy. That poses like a whole, you don't want to be that sort of, it's just like the same thing of like having a really high FTP also puts you in like a weird spot where it's suddenly like, all right, well, how do I fuel my work? It's like a first world problem of the nth degree. But that's another thing for him.
You can go to Precision Hydration, or like Llewellyn does like a patch kit test where you can really figure out, a lot of really great information to help support you, and just ruling that out as like one of the reasons why you're cramping.
Do you think that amount of sodium or salt that you sweat an hour, is that something that is, as a person, like individual, that doesn't change? Or do you know if that's something that changes as your fitness changes? Or, do you know
that's a good question.
Varies?
Yeah. So typically as you get more fit, you're more efficient. So you won't sweat as much, and so you won't lose as much as well. So sometimes it's good to do some, even just regular sweat testing, throughout your season, and then also in different like temperatures. So if you're going into a really like hot and humid training ride, you could do some sweat testing to see what your rate is compared to like a cooler day as well. And that way, when you go into your race, you know how to adjust things accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really highly variable from even the same individual at different times. Like it can change, which is super interesting.
And altitude as well. You know, if you're going to do Leadville, you're going to have to almost double your hydration.
It's hard.
It's really hard. So hard. That's what makes Leadville just so exceptional.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go into Tom's question. Tom has a good one. So this is actually, so Tom said, hey, something was talked about on the forum. Do you want to talk about it? So he says, this is an alternative to the traditional calorie in, calorie out approach explained on the forum by the forum user called The Conductor. That's TrainerRoad.com/forum. You can go check it out there. It says, what do you guys think? This post really intrigued me. So I'm going to give you the TLDR of what this post is, but you're welcome to go to it. You can look just energy availability. If you search that, you'll be able to find it. But basically, the premise of the post is that it says the energy balance, or in other words, thinking of things in terms of like trying to strike a balance with the energy in and energy out that you have so that you can be properly fueled for life and work. The premise for this is that energy balance is tough to rely on because it's reliant upon measuring calories accurately and your basal metabolic rate, which can be tough to accurately do. And then it says the energy availability is superior. Which this kind of gets confusing because for energy availability, you still need to do those two things. So those two things still matter. But anyways, energy availability is defined as your energy intake. So in other words, the food or calories you're taking in, minus your exercise energy expenditure. In other words, what you're taking out during your exercising, normalized to your fat-free mass per day. And that makes sense, right, Alex? Because you want to not lose your fat-free mass, right? We don't want to develop bird bones and we don't want to lose muscle. So that makes sense. And then, but here's the interesting part. And none of this is going to make sense to us. So you have to kind of like wrap it back around to calories with a formula in the end. But basically your energy availability gives you a figure. And that figure is in terms of calories per kilogram of fat-free mass per day, which none of us think of something like that. So it has zero bearing, right? Like we might know how many calories are in a Rice Krispie treat, so we can kind of understand that. And we might know our basal metabolic rate. This part makes no sense to us unless we wrap it back around. But anyways, say that if you want hypertrophy, in other words, getting jacked, that would be greater than 45 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass per day. But if you want to seek maintenance, it should be somewhere around 45. And then if you want to seek weight loss, it should be somewhere between 30 to 45. And it also pointed out in a study that's referenced in here that men seem more resilient to low energy availability, seeing health and performance decrements only when it goes to 20 to 25 calories of fat-free mass or per kilogram of fat-free mass per day. So I built a spreadsheet for this to like try to figure it out for myself. There's other spreadsheets you can find online, and looking at it, I think it seems like a very complicated way to go about an already somewhat complicated thing. Alex, like, what do you think? And then how do you work with all your athletes in terms of like measuring? Does everybody measure everything with a scale? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I take a very practical approach with nutrition. Like, I'm like the Spock of nutrition. Like, I like to keep things like as logical as possible and realistic for people. And so, when I look at this equation, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like way too complicated. There's a lot of room for like a lot of margin of errors with like calculating fat mass, unless you're doing a DEXA scan. The, energy intake, there's a margin of error there. So it's like, to me, it's just way too complicated. Plus, like, the study was only done on small young females, and that like they just need a larger, more diverse population to do this with. And so for me, I typically will calculate their BMR. I'll put in the activity factor in there, and then I'll compare it to I'll have them do some food journaling, and I'll start comparing, like, what are they seeing in energy levels, in their weight, in athletic performance, and what does their current diet look like? Where would I like it to be? And start filling in those gaps. I would say the majority of the athletes that I see are underfueled. And so it's a lot of trying to find easy ways to just start filling in those gaps so that they're feeling better, they're performing better. And a lot of times when we start filling in those gaps, the body composition improves really nicely over time.
Over time seems like a key thing too, because usually, do you have athletes that come to you just looking for like the quick shift in body composition so they can carry on?
Yeah, and I'm not about the quick fixes. Like this is something that they have to look as like a long-term thing, because the quick fixes, it's not going to stay. Like I want it to be the right type of weight loss so that once we reach that goal, they feel really confident moving forward, like knowing how to fuel, but then also it's a lot easier for them to maintain that body composition that they achieved.
Yeah.
I'm
Ivy, what
laughing
are your
about
thoughts on this?
body composition because I'll like have a goal to eat as much as I can with, getting stronger in mind. And I'll spend like 2 days eating as much as I can. And I'm like, why aren't I more ripped? Like I'm totally subject to that. I know, for real.
Yeah, finger tapping bicep.
I did push-ups yesterday. Why am I not yoked?
It's like the same fear that we hear all the time with like cyclists, and they're like, no, I don't want to lift weights. I'll put on muscle mass. And like, if only it were that easy. Take a step back there, Arnold. Like it's not that easy for us to just add muscle mass or to just lose weight or just gain weight or do anything like that. It's tough.
Yeah.
Chad, what are your thoughts on this? This is it just excessive complication on top of complication, or is this something that you would want to use?
It seems like that's always a situation where it's I won't say needlessly complex. I think it's a complex scenario, so it has to have some level of complexity, but that complexity makes it such that it's a big turnoff. It's not something that people will stick to long term. I mean, even if you can get it dialed for a short period of time, are you going to continue to do that? Are you going to continue to reassess your BMR? Are you going to really dig into the nitty gritty of what your caloric intake is? Are you going to start? I mean, we talked earlier off air about journaling this stuff, and journaling's all good and fine, but if you're not making sense of that information along the way, it's really of no use to you. And just like Alex said, I mean, you got to keep it simple. I mean, you got to keep it simple just to preserve your sanity. But if you're going to stick with it long term, it's so much of this is straightforward. And Alex, you tell me. I feel like there's a lot of benefit to be gained by simply journaling. Or not journaling, by simply recording what you're eating. I think so many people are unaware of how many things they put into their mouth or how few things they put into their mouth relative to how much work they're doing over the course of a day. And just putting it on paper and having even a week's worth of a food diary to look at and say, wow, I am severely underfueling on these days and needlessly overfueling on these days. And it can bring a lot of clarity to a situation without this complexity.
Yeah, when my athletes start journaling, I say, this is not because you're on a diet. The goal of us working together is not for you to get good at journaling. It's for you to use it as a learning tool of how the food choices that you're making translate to the nutrition you're providing your body and how you perform, how you feel throughout the day. Like that is what it's used for. But the end goal is to wean them off of journaling and just have a really good idea of how to adjust their eating to meet their needs, depending on where they're at in, their season of their sport.
Yeah. I do what I call calibration months. So because I would lose my sanity if I was trying to measure everything every day of my life. And there are days during these calibration months where it's like, hey, I'm not measuring because I have way too much upstairs going on right now, and I need to not have to worry about more details. I have enough details to worry about. But that said, what I try to do is once every 4 months or once every 3 months, depending, I will do like what I call, again, a calibration month. And that's just where I go back to the basics of measuring and then as I go after that month for a few months, I tend to drift away from that very slightly. And then all that calibration month does is it kind of brings me back in and realigns my perspectives with reality a bit. So typically what I find is that I'm underfueling on the important things that my body needs, maybe overfueling on the stuff that I don't need as much. Maybe my portions change a bit. Maybe once I start doing that, I realize I'm just eating the same things for every single meal all the way through, and I need to change up the variety. It just makes me more conscious about that. And when I measure it, then that allows me to be able to go through and kind of proceed with confidence without all that stress throughout those other months. Some of you, it might work to measure everything all the time. Some of you, a scale, it sounds like the best way to ruin nutrition. And if that's the case, then you shouldn't force yourself to do something like that either, because it's important to retain that. But this looks complicated. And directly looking at EA, I feel like the estimates are way too high. Looking at 30 grams or 30 calories per kilogram of fat-free mass per day, for me, gets close. It's slightly on the high side, I feel like, for what I need to be able to maintain. And according to this, it's, far above. Honestly, I feel like a lot of endurance athletes undernourish rather than overnourish, even though general human fear is about overnourishment. I feel like endurance athletes kind of actually, the script is flipped, very common. So heck, if everybody follows this and starts fueling themselves better, it's probably not the worst thing in the world. But I don't think, I certainly am not going to use this. It just seems too complex. So,
yeah, that's the kind of thing that pushes me over the edge, trying to, when you're talking about too much stuff going on upstairs, that, measuring that to such a fine degree feels like too much, or a big burden and a big lift, and it is for me almost always. So I hear you on that one.
Yeah, I feel like Alex. I mean, I think all of us can probably attest to this, but when we can take delight in our nutrition, like meaning that like when we are eating, we're enjoying it. That is like that is a huge uplift for everything else in our life. Yeah, it just changes everything.
Yeah. And I always stress that to my athletes. I ask them, I'm like, are you enjoying what you're eating right now? And they're like, yes. I'm like, good. Because that is like the best of both worlds, when you can like fuel your body and truly enjoy what you're eating. Because it doesn't matter how healthy a food is. If you hate it, like, no, you're not, like, it's not going to last long, like for something to force yourself to eat. Like raw broccoli for me, like if someone told me I had to eat raw broccoli in order to be healthy, I'd be like, heck no. Like, I'll pass on that. Like I'll cook my broccoli and eat it. But yeah, exactly. So like, let's be realistic and like choosing foods that you like, or like looking at different ways to prepare foods to make it something that you enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Antonio's question. This one's going to poke a few hornets' nests. Or actually, no, Jeff's question. Forgive me. We'll poke a different hornet's nest first. There's a popular fitness influencer who swears by taking essential amino acids during his ultra-endurance events. From the studies that I have read, they do seem to have benefits to maintaining muscle mass and maybe delaying catabolism. Do you think this would translate into delaying fatigue during long events, as this fitness influencer claims it has for him? Thanks for all that you do. I always learn something new when listening to each podcast. So essential amino acids, Chad. I guess like I've heard people also, I guess analogous to this, be like, you need branched chain amino acids or BCAAs or something to be able to stop breakdown of muscles. That's kind of like the bro science logic behind this is like exercise breakdown, this stop. So like, what are you?
And again, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like that's getting a little too in the weeds. I mean, you either have sufficient protein or you have insufficient protein intake, and whether it's the proper composition of BCAAs and EAAs and AAs, I think that's, again, getting a little too granular for what we really need to focus on, which is enough protein distributed accordingly or appropriately across a day, and high quality protein. I mean, these are the things we should be concerned with, not what specific, am I getting enough leucine, isoleucine? I mean, just the people who get caught up in that, I think, have different motives, and a lot of those motives are marketing driven. And not to harp on influencers here, but I do think that, who are we talking to?
We're talking to Jeff.
Jeff. I do think Jeff is absolutely right to be suspicious, because I mean, what is the aim of an influencer but to influence? They're not necessarily here to inform, at least not in an unbiased manner. So with that kind of in mind, I do want to mention that we kind of touched on this a few podcasts back. It was number 388, where we talked about using hard gainer powder to fuel long workouts. And in that, we did touch on some aspects of protein ingestion during work. But we also touched on the fact that there's pretty much a dearth of peer-reviewed research to support most, if not all, of these more marketing-oriented claims. And I mentioned that I wasn't really confident there was any recently conducted research. I imagined it was out there, but I hadn't looked for it or found it. So most what I relied on for that was a systematic review from roughly 10 years ago by McClellan and colleagues, and it tidily captured all the most relevant findings, and it confirmed the previous research, and it confirmed our most sensible suspicions. So I'll sum that up briefly. They looked at roughly 30 studies, or they looked at a number of studies, but about 30 of them met the inclusion criteria. And then they categorized those studies into two sections. Either protein was ingested during exercise or protein was ingested during and after exercise. And when I looked at the study appraisal, I mean, they were pretty rigorous. They eliminated as many confounders as they could, of course, but they harped on lack of dietary control. If that wasn't obvious and evident, that study didn't make the cut. Use of trained versus untrained subjects, the number of subjects. I mean, a lot of the usual criticisms. And then, of course, the sensitivity of the test metrics. And all of this to find, yet again, that as long as carbohydrate intake is optimal, and by optimal, I mean it's consumed at a rate that actually matches oxidation. So we're not just kind of saying, I did this many calories, and they're measuring gas exchange and saying, this is how many calories you oxidize. These are the forms in which you oxidize it. I mean, they get specific with it. And they concluded, and these are the author's words, that protein supplementation provided no further ergogenic effect. So that's just the gist of it across the board. And again, be it with recovery or mitigating the effects of this protein catabolism we all fear so much during longer events, and performance in cases where carbohydrate is in fact insufficient, those are all realistic potential benefits. That's real. I'm not going to argue that, but there is still just nothing regarding improved performance or reduction in fatigue, as is claimed here, at least during events up to and including in an 80-kilometer time trial. And that's about as far as this particular paper went. And admittedly, this does mean that this review leaves the door open for longer events. I get that. That's a safe argument. I mean, 80 kilometers, we're talking real close to 50 miles. An elite athlete could do that in a couple of hours. So the degradation, the potential for protein degradation over the course of 2 hours versus something that could take 5, 8, 10, 12 hours. Yeah, there's my caveat, right? But their findings also casted a bit of a pall on the protein co-ingestion's purported beneficial effects on muscle glycogen recovery and then rate of muscle glycogen utilization in later exercise, so subsequent workouts and races, et cetera, though the authors did actually acknowledge that their data was limited in this area, fair play. But they went on to observe that many of these studies couldn't measure protein's effects on particular things. And the muscle glycogen that I just mentioned, protein turnover, changes in signaling proteins, all of which basically distills down to that these studies, these authors, lack the ability to sufficiently understand any of the observed changes in the rates of this protein balance, this protein synthesis versus degradation. And in turn, this kind of made their findings, as the authors described it, biased and inconclusive. So to put it another way, to put it more simply, they either took from their findings what they needed, or they couldn't back up their hypotheses, or little column A, little column B. All of which has me wondering if this is maybe why there wasn't a meta-analysis performed also, because the data just, they didn't feel confident working with it. Excuse me. But that's old news, right? So that's from the previous podcast. What about some brand spanking hot off the presses stuff? And it just so happens that in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition, very recently, September of last year, Liang and colleagues penned a research paper titled "The Effects of Carbohydrate and Protein Supplement Strategies on Endurance Capacity and Muscle Damage of Endurance Runners," in this case, which, if you're going to measure muscle damage, that's kind of the way to go, at least over elite cyclists or endurance cyclists. And this was a double-blind, controlled crossover trial, all the things we want to see. What did they find? Take a wild guess. In this case, recreationally active male runners, there were only 10 of them, so small pool size. But during repeated runs to exhaustion, there was no significant reductions in time to exhaustion when the protein was supplemented. But on a positive note, all 4 markers that they used to assess muscle damage proved more favorable in the protein co-ingestion trials. So again, pretty bankable benefits on the muscle damage side of things, but still, it seems to me that the jury is in, that the verdict is in fact in. There is still nothing suggestive of scientifically reliable benefits to endurance or resistance to fatigue.
This isn't. This kind of seems like, Chad, the real reason to take in protein, like any sort of amino acid co-ingestion or anything else when you're doing your exercise, if you have back-to-back sort of things where the next day you're going to train or race and the next day and the next day and the next day, this is where it seems like there's a greater likelihood for benefit here. But it's not going to make you faster at the end of the race. At least science doesn't seem to show that. Would that be a safe assumption?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're making some assumptions yourself. I mean, maybe this, I mean, if we're talking about some lunatic who wants to do an Ironman every day for 50 days sort of thing, absolutely. I mean, you're going to have to get your protein in during the events. They do. They do. They're out there.
By calling you a lunatic, but you are crazy.
You have to be a lunatic. I say it in the most favorable manner, but you got to be a little off mentally. But that would be a situation where if you're doing long event or long workout after long workout, there are only so many other hours in the day for you to sufficiently get your protein in. So taking some in on the bike does make sense. And over the course of a long event where, you could get to a point where you're simply metabolizing everything your body can get its hands on, especially if you're under fueling, that makes sense to me too. But is that what we're talking about here? I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. Yeah, cool. What are your thoughts on this, Alex? I don't know if you prescribe any sort of co-ingestion like this for your athletes for different circumstances.
Yeah, I agree with what all Chad said. There's no clear answer. But again, from a logistical standpoint, like it's another thing you'd have to remember to consume. And how are you going to consume it? With cycling, I have a saying with my triathletes, like the bike is the buffet. So usually you can get away with a little bit more variety of fuel sources without having any GI issues compared to like running. For training, for long distance training, I mean, if you wanted to take in some protein, at the 4-hour mark of your 5-6 hour ride, I'm okay with it. But it's, as I tell them, I'm like, this isn't going to help your performance. It may help recovery. It may not. That's up to you if you want to take that in. But I also want to prioritize what you're eating outside of your training, getting, quality protein, quality carbs after your workout, and then a consistent supply the rest of the day. That's going to be my top priority.
Well, and it could potentially harm you, right, Alex, if you're taking in protein from maybe the wrong source during exercise? Ham sandwich.
Yes.
Ham sandwich.
Yes. I had a triathlete that did Ironman Barcelona last fall, and she was in the transition zone, the day before the race, just chatting with athletes and asking them about their fueling plan. And one was like, "Oh, I got a tuna sandwich and some bag of mixed nuts." And I was like, "Oh, what?" Like, just barf. Like I could not.
A tuna melt. I can't think of anything more like. My god!
I just could not. And I was. And I was like, okay, well, I will always have a job. That's what I took from that.
Yeah, absolutely. But Ivy, corn dogs probably fall within that. We've talked about that on the podcast before.
Glizzies, yeah.
Gas station hit right there. So, Chad, thanks for looking into the research on that one. It's interesting because this is something that I even know an elite athlete, and they brought on a new nutritionist, and that nutritionist was like really hitting home, like, you're a woman. So as a woman, you need to take in protein during your ride. And this is a high level athlete. And this, this nutritionist, because I don't know that they were a dietitian. There's a difference between those two substantially. I'm not sure nutritionist actually exists like an actual title. Dietitian, on the other hand, very different. So, but they were giving this athlete what I would find like very, unscientific advice on this that could, at least in the way that they were planning on taking it in, could even compromise glycolysis, right? Like their body's ability to be able to use all the other fuel that really needs to push the muscles. It's always, I think there's a lot of benefit in simplicity, like you mentioned, Alex, for logistics, but then also just in simplicity, like think of your gut, like give your gut the best chance it can to be able to process something instead of throwing a cornucopia at it and hoping that it somehow figures it all out. It's a good way to do it. So cool. All right. More Hornet's Nest from Antonio. Hey team, first and foremost, thank you to all of you for all the energy you're spending to help get people faster. Yeah, it's what we're about, Antonio. And if you want to try it, go to TrainerRoad.com, sign up. We would love to have you. It's AI FTP detection, adaptive training. It's all amazing. You don't even have to test anymore. He says, it's a slogan, but it definitely worked for me in so many ways. And not only with my FTP, but also with all my friends. I've convinced to try TrainerRoad. I also would like to thank you a lot for this podcast, which educated me and taught me so many things about my hobby. It's awesome. You all rock. We should all be like Antonio. I've heard people, I don't know if you've seen this, Ivy, where they're like, I don't want to tell my friends about TrainerRoad, like, because then they'll get faster. And like right now, now I'm faster than them because I'm using it. But if you all get faster, then there's a compounding effect. Make your friends fast too. Go tell them about it. So base training has many purposes, Antonio says, and one of them is to improve our fat metabolism. This intrigues me because I would like to take the opportunity during this base phase to lose a bit of weight and maximize fat metabolism adaptation. So this is like, this is so common, right? Like people are like, base training is the time to shift my metabolism, to burn fat, to achieve the body composition that I will then carry throughout the rest of the season. This is the very simplistic, but very, very common perspective that everybody has. Antonio says, I'm 90 kilograms or 198 pounds for 180 centimeters tall or 5'9" inches. And I'm always fueling my workouts with 90 grams an hour up to 120 grams per hour, depending on the intensity. Golf clap for Antonio. Well done on fueling yourself. I noticed during this season that I tend to easily bonk, picking out some red flags, Ivy, that maybe you can keep track of here. But I noticed during this season that I tend to easily bonk during my recovery rides, which I wasn't fueling much, making me think that my metabolism wasn't flexible enough. My plan to improve this is to start my endurance rides fasted and start fueling with 90 grams an hour of carbs only after the first hour. A very common suggestion that you hear for a lot of athletes, something that I have tried in the past, and I'm sure many of you listening have tried. I hope with this strategy to force my body to utilize fat and have better adaptation during the ride. But here's my question. What is happening to insulin when I take a gel or a sip of my sports drink during an endurance ride? Doesn't insulin rise up immediately, shutting down the fat pathways and favoring the use of stored glycogen? If yes, would it mean that every time I fuel, I would lose the opportunity to teach my body how to use fat? And if so, wouldn't it be the solution to ingest carbs with a very low glycemic index, like super starch, for example, if I'm right? And I hope not, because super starch is very expensive, Antonio says. So does my theory apply to at all intensities? Thanks again for all, and I hope my question can interest a lot of athletes. This question covers everything, and we could do an entire month's worth of podcast just on this question. Ivy, do you notice any red flags from Antonio's question that pop up, things that make you go, I wonder if there's either misunderstanding or perhaps misplaced understanding?
Yes. The ones that I want to cover are that they're saying that they bonk during recovery rides. I want to cover that red flag of the word bonking. And B, that they are addressing not fueling during the recovery rides. So the overarching theme here, what they're experiencing as a bonk isn't something that probably is going to happen on an endurance ride, and is probably being conflated with just being under fueled before the ride. Because if you're starting out that ride, and I mean, when we're thinking about, a recovery ride, we're talking somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour and a half, usually at most, and at a very chill endurance pace. And if you experience what you feel like is a bonk, where you run out of energy on this endurance pace ride, this isn't a bonk that you'd experience during a normal training scenario. It means that you didn't go into this recovery ride fueled. And it doesn't mean that you need to fuel your recovery rides with gels and a bunch of carbs and a bunch of sugar. It means that you went into this depleted. And so when they also say that, I'm not fueling my recovery rides much, that's okay. And you shouldn't feel like you need to go fuel these recovery rides. You can't start with an empty tank on these rides and expect to, when you start feeling depleted, taking a bunch of electrolytes and carbs and sugar and calories and expect to then feel better on this ride. That negates the purpose of this recovery ride, to start empty and try to catch up in the midst of it. These rides need to be fueled comprehensively beforehand, and then you won't feel that bonking sensation, which is not a bonk. It's just going into this empty.
Yeah, well said, Ivy. And boy, haven't we seen when you look at the power profiles for what an athlete would call an easy ride,
Don't.
Ivy and I, sorry.
Oh
sorry for
my
triggering
gosh,
you,
it's
Ivy.
so triggering.
But they're often not easy as well. So, you think it's a recovery ride, but you look back and a really good exercise actually for everybody. If you're doing outside workouts or you're doing any sort of workout and it has some sort of goal or intention, let's say it's to stay within like 70 to 75% of your FTP, something like that. When you do that, after your ride, go ahead and go to TrainerRoad and make a custom power zone. You can do that. You can say add power zone and make it 70 to 75% and see how much, like what percentage of that ride you actually stayed within the intended zone. In the majority of cases, honestly, I think it's fair to say the majority of cases where athletes are doing outside workouts, they're not spending the actual prescribed time in that zone. Instead, it's typically far north of that, and it comes in the form of surges. You're surging above, surging above, surging above, and you're missing the point of the workout. So,
and seeking for your normalized power or average power even to be in that target zone is not meeting the same requirement as staying in that desired target power zone.
Yes, you should try every second of the ride to stay within that zone. You should not try to, at the end of the zone, hopefully come up with an average that aligns with it. Because there are literally countless ways that you could arrive at that. Many of them fall outside the intention of the workout, right? So, but this is like a situation where even if, let's say they're coming in fueled, Ivy, but there might be a situation, I'm not saying this is you specifically, Antonio, we're speaking to many people around the world with this. You may be thinking that you're doing recovery rides, but in reality, you're not. You're doing something that is more demanding than that because you're surging, bouncing all over the place and not staying within that. They should feel really easy, like really, really easy. That's the point of a recovery ride. So that's one good thing that I would add to that. Chad, do you want to take on the insulin thing? And then Alex, I'd love to go to you on the fat metabolism side and adaptation, but maybe we can go into the insulin side. And I know Maxine, for when you're watching this, Maxine's going to throw up the different visual representations so we can explain kind of what happens with insulin. Chad, can you explain what happens when we take in sugar on the bike in an active state versus when we're just in an inactive state?
Yep. So we covered this in depth, great depth, probably too deep, podcast 327, quite a while back. So if you want way more information on this, what's to follow, then revisit that. And it actually contains the illustrations that we're going to recycle for this little presentation. The question really is carbohydrate or sugar really during a ride negatively impacting your fat burning engine. So we'll look at insulin's roles, but really only those that are relevant to endurance performance. It has many, but we're going to focus on the three most endurance relevant roles. That's what I meant to say. First of which is to reduce blood glucose, so the amount of sugar circulating in your bloodstream. And second is to facilitate the storage of energy. And the third is to mobilize that very energy. So really, insulin kind of does that first thing. It keeps our blood sugar in check by performing those latter two roles. So it either stores or mobilizes that blood glucose. So when it comes to storing and mobilizing, insulin facilitates the packing away. So with the storing in particular into either fat stores or glycogen stores. And that's really what we're primarily concerned with. There are some other minor stores throughout the body, but again, not especially relevant to what we're talking about. So it moves it to where it's needed, and most relevant to us would be the muscles. As far as a blood glucose sink, the muscles are far and away the biggest, and they absorb on the order of 80% of the circulating blood glucose that we try to pack away. And I think where your confusion exists, Antonio, is that at rest, insulin is necessary for muscle uptake. So the shuttling of the sugar in our bloodstream into our muscles is an insulin-dependent one. This whole transport mechanism requires insulin. But during exercise, there's a whole additional mechanism at work where glucose can actually be transported into the muscle cells without insulin. And this takes place via a contraction-facilitated means. So It's this whole GLUT4 translocation. Translocation happens anyway, but either way, again, if you want to get into the weeds, podcast 327, but put really simply, by contracting our muscles, and specifically our leg muscles, we help our muscles express this alternate mechanism, okay? This insulin-independent transport, and without insulin, move sugar into the working muscles. So yes, insulin in the blood does tamp down fat metabolism, but it also inhibits glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. So the breakdown of glycogen and the creation of new blood glucose or glucose that could be distributed wherever via non-carbohydrate substrate, et cetera, because it's actually trying to clear the sugar out of the blood, not add to it, right? But insulin production isn't tamped down, is tamped down, potentially way down, and doesn't manifest in these, at least in the moment, undesirable effects when we're exercising, when the muscles are repeatedly contracting. So you're partly right in that it does impede fat metabolism, but you're partly wrong in that it actually inhibits glycogen breakdown. And that has you asking if you're doing things that fly in the face of your intentions. So your concern that carbohydrate is messing with your ability to metabolize fat is a concern that you can lay to rest, because an exercising body actually uses this alternate non-insulin mediated means to get your nutrition from your blood into your working muscles.
Yeah. Now so there's no concern there. The fat adaptation side, I want to cover, Alex, you must be bombarded with this sort of thing. And then the concepts of trying to implement fasted training and I like Antonio's wording here. He uses in quotes, force his body to utilize fat better during the ride. That's like the intention is a very forceful intent, is that fasting will make this happen. What do you say to your athletes that come to you with this sort of strategy in mind, or this kind of outcome that they're going for?
Yeah, well, I feel like most of the fat adaptation is stemmed towards wanting to like lose body fat as their main goal. And if that's their goal, I would rather shift to their everyday eating and making sure that's in check first before we get into trying to do some sort of fat adaptation. If you're going to be doing a low carb, high fat fueling system, you will see some fat metabolism, but you'll also see some muscle breakdown as well, which isn't great for, strength output over time either. Right now with the current literature on low carb, high fat, it's incomplete, just because they don't have an optimal control diet that currently exists to compare it to. And there's a lot of different techniques to doing a fat adaptation. And so I think the most important takeaway is that there's no one size fits all in a solution, and there never will be. But from my perspective, based on the research right now, I'm all about the carbs. Like the fat adaptation, following that type of diet is also really challenging to just be compliant with, especially if you want to have a social life. And so, for me, I tend to lean towards the easier route of just fueling with carbs, and then just making sure that your everyday eating is on point to support gradually improving body composition.
You published a reel the other day on Instagram that was really relevant to this, where it was like an athlete that eats a garden salad for lunch, and then it's like every athlete later on that day, and it was like, I don't know if it was like cereal or candy, but they were just like showering themselves with it, right? And yeah, I've noticed that with fasted training and athletes that do fasted training, it's really tough if you don't feel the work, then you put yourself in a hole. And remember, fueling with 80 grams an hour or 90 grams an hour seems like a lot for a lot of people. 90 grams an hour, you're going to zero out if you're doing 100 watts for an hour. 100 watts. Most people are doing way more than that. So it's hard to not get into a hole. But boy, if you don't bother with trying to fill it up at all when you're training, it's going to be really tough for your body to be able to feel like it's in a balanced and a good state to be able to carry energy levels, recover, build and adapt from that training that you just did, and just carry on with life for the rest of the day. It's really tough. And in terms of what they're going for, this might be a situation where you're fighting for a marginal gain. And then on the other side, the opportunity cost or even just the detriment to it is on the matter of multiple percentage points rather than a fraction of a single percentage point. And that's always something that's really important for us to keep in mind. Like, what is the risk that you're dealing with? And the risk, if you are training and working hard and you're investing hours of time, energy, hard work, and then your nutrition choices are just making it so that you can't get the benefit, the intended benefit from that, you're really losing a lot. Like, that's a bad bet to make. You can change that around. So yeah, it's, look, like the other side of things too, and in most cases when people want, so we're all stemming Antonio's from saying like, I'm noticing that I have low energy, which perceived as bonking in a recovery ride. So as a result, I must not have a flexible metabolism, which is a very common term that you see come from fat adapted narratives. I must not have a flexible metabolism, so therefore I need to do fasted training and I need to do this. Think about the logic to that, Antonio. And I know this is going to sound painfully obvious, but what you're saying is, and I come in with low energy into a workout, I'm not flexible enough, so I need to come in with lower energy into a workout, and somehow that's going to make me more flexible. It doesn't make sense. So instead, what you can do is you can nourish yourself like Ivy and Alex have suggested, and then come into those workouts so that you can operate. And heck, if you want to burn more calories, just raise your FTP, like work harder, do more work. That's the best way to burn more calories. It's going to increase it way more than anything else. And really, in reality, as long as you can do the work, who cares how your body is feeling that work? The key is that you can do the work. So don't get caught up in the details. Okay, Justin's question. Justin says, I've been using TrainerRoad for about 5 months. When doing intervals, I've noticed that the first couple of minutes of a new interval after an active rest period is very challenging. Then it gets easier until near the end of the interval. I bet there's some people listening to this are like, Justin, yes, absolutely. And then other people are like, Justin is an alien. I don't know what he's talking about because that does not relate to me. This seems counterintuitive, as I should be the most fresh right after the active rest period, but this phenomenon is even noted in some of the in-workout text that I see using TrainerRoad. Physiologically, what is the explanation for this, and is there a way to avoid it? Chad, what say you on this one?
Okay, so on the physiological side, and I also want to touch on the psychological side. I think that's something that we could talk about afterward. The question is, why is it so hard? And it's kind of, to put a fancy little pithy term on it, would be to label these as biphasic intervals. And really, anytime we dial the intensity up, we kind of get this biphasic experience. It's part and parcel. It's pretty it is unavoidable. And for further information on this one, when 313 we covered VO2 on kinetics. So the ramping into the interval, and then on 324 we covered the excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, and that's effectively the VO2 off kinetics. So the other side of things coming down, which is what you're experiencing, ramping into an interval and then coming out of an interval. So quickly, a refresher on VO2 kinetics is, and specifically we'll look at the on kinetics in this whole biphasic nature. This explains the physiological side of this minor and repeated challenge. But again, I do feel it necessary that we touch on the psychological side of the very same struggle. But really simply, short and sweet, we create oxygen demand at the muscle when we exercise. But it takes time to kind of spin up the oxygen supplying engines. So to get air from the oxygen from the air we breathe to the muscles that are clamoring for this necessary O2 that will allow them to make energy aerobically. So there's a lag in oxygen delivery, but the increased work demand, it's immediate. It's there regardless. And this has to be covered, and we do it anaerobically. This is kind of beside the point today. And this is the early on stage when everything is working madly to come online to support that muscle demand. And quite simply, it's uncomfortable. It's a necessary transition into each work effort. The good news is that we eventually suffer through this transition state, and we settle into the second of this biphasic, these two stages, and that's the more steady state portion of the effort. And that's what you're describing when you talk about it kind of feels easy. And I know easy is a relative term here, but it doesn't seem as miserable as it did. And then soon enough, of course, fatigue rears its ugly head, and that seemingly steady state plateau starts to climb more and more rapidly. And again, if you recall in one of those previous podcasts at the 313, we talked about the slow component and why this happens. And the workout intensity relative to your current capacity starts to kind of help you clarify your understanding of what your current limits are. And this is especially apparent in the more intense work domains. And if you're talking about VO2 max repeats, you're up there in terms of intensity. But a really simple way to look at this is we're disrupting all sorts of forms of bodily homeostasis. And then we're finishing the work, hitting a recovery valley, and returning to, or at least getting closer to homeostasis. And then we're doing it again and again and again. It's just this cycle of disruption and recovery and disruption and recovery. And it's just not going to be a pleasant thing. But more good news is that it actually gets a little easier to do it as the workout progresses, because these on-kinetics, and not just with respect to oxygen, but there are other forms of on-kinetics that effectively pick up, and those transitions, those uncomfortable transitions actually shrink a bit, at least until fatigue catches up with you, and then hopefully by then you're wrapping up the workout anyway. But you get to that steady state effort level a little more rapidly. And I mean, this is the very nature of priming efforts. I mean, this is why we warm up for efforts of all nature, whether it's a workout or a race or a group ride or whatever. So that's basically the physiological side of things in a nutshell.
Interesting. The psychological side is a different part of it, right? In the sense that you are become accustomed to, and even in the beginning of like the first half of a recovery interval, a lot of the time, you're still just you're coming down and it still feels really tough and uncomfortable. And then in many cases, it's like right when you start to feel, okay, I'm actually starting to feel normal, like I'm not under duress, that's when the next one starts.
Yeah.
and
that
psychologically, that can be really tough. Right?
Really tough. And it super depends on what your psychological state is coming into the workout. Because I mean, if you're riding a wave, you just had maybe you've done a similar workout and you nailed it, or you just had a really good race or some indication that your performance is on an upswing, it's so much easier to suffer, to get through that first transition minute, to settle into the interval, to get the often too brief recovery, but feel ready for the next one, feel like you can tackle that challenge. And I kind of pin this to a level of engagement. It's that ability to psychologically rise to whatever the occasion may be. And that all hinges on just how in charge of the workout do you feel. Because, I mean, the same workout on different days, let's just take like 3-minute VO2 max intervals with 3-minute recoveries, a really standard VO2 max workout can be, I mean, going into it, you can feel, again, just ready to take it by the, I'm not sure what term I'm looking for, but take it by the collar. Yeah, take it by the horns and own it. You feel that coming into it, and it typically bears out over the course of the workout. And sometimes if you're struggling, it's going to hurt the whole time. And you feel like maybe you're not up to this challenge, and therefore your psychological level of engagement just isn't as high as it otherwise would be.
Mm-hmm. How do you manage that, Ivy, on those days? Like when it's just a day where that work feels harder. Like on other days, you could probably do it just fine. But on that day, it's too hard feeling.
Well, this is especially true for me when I'm looking at intervals that are not my strong suit. So something that is a higher intensity, that is more physically demanding, will not hurt in the beginning of this interval in the same way that something that's lower intensity at a longer duration for me. So it seems backwards, and that reiterates that it's very much mental for me. There's no reason that a longer, lower intensity interval, something near around threshold, would feel more demanding in the beginning than something like a high-end VO2 max interval. But it does, because it's not my strong suit, and I psych myself out about it, and I'm like, there's no way I can maintain this for X number of minutes. And so the way that I manage it is I don't, and I'm really poor at it, and I expect those ones that are really challenging for me to hurt a lot in the beginning and feel scary and unmanageable. And over time, the more confidence I build in that region, the less, the more that diminishes. But it's something that I can't talk myself out of in that moment. I just have to keep doing them and build confidence that I can maintain those intensities at those durations and watch myself build fitness before that diminishes.
Nice. I like it. You are managing it then. It's not that you don't manage it.
Well,
Alex?
It feels like I'm not managing it when in the moment I'm just like, yep, this sucks. Well, we'll see. I just kind of let myself sit in it, There's no way to reduce it or tell myself that it's not happening, because it's absolutely happening. So
yeah. There's no point in avoiding it, right? Because that it is what it is. It's there. Yeah. Alex, I don't know if you relate to this as an athlete, but, and like this sort of, the beginning feels so hard, then later on it changes. But I could also see nutrition having like a profound effect, especially when we're talking about the psychological effect.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I have athletes that are doing, high intensity interval works, we definitely make sure that they're feeling well before that, so that they're going in with fresh energy. We're trying to spare some glycogen, so especially in those final intervals, like for me, usually it's the final ones where I'm really struggling. But if you fuel really well, usually you can finish out pretty strong. Because like that high intensity interval stuff that burns through glycogen really quickly. So if you can get enough carbs in there to get through there, that will be really helpful. And that's one thing, like fat adaptation doesn't really help with high intensity workouts either. Like you got to use carbs for those high intensity things.
Yeah. And in reality, I mean, if you're like a steady state athlete, you're probably not doing as much high intensity interval training, but that does not mean, we've covered this many times, that it does not mean that it doesn't have a place in your program. It's extremely beneficial to be able to raise your threshold, to be able to do plenty of other things. And a higher threshold on race day means that you can carry a higher pace with less effort, right? Or at least the same pace with less effort. So, this caused me to reflect, and I look forward, subconsciously this is developed, I look forward so much to half to 3/4 of the way through an interval. Like I almost like Men in Black pen myself on the first anything before that. Like it's just like, don't judge, like don't make decisions, don't decide the fate of the interval. Instead, it's just let myself get through. Then when I'm half to 3/4 of the way through, not only do I then get to tell myself you've already done half of it, so of course you can do the rest. But then on top of that, I'm also like, that's where it starts to feel best. And I have no clue if it actually does, but that's what I've just built up in my mind. And that's the same thing with short intervals, long intervals. I do the same thing. I think that there's a lot of value to looking forward to something rather than trying to avoid something that you dread. So instead of fixating on the things that are hard, scary, difficult, instead find the good and then just focus on the good. Many times our bodies are capable of the work if we can just allow our minds to be able to, not govern, and allow our minds to be able to let our bodies do that. So, of course, if it's properly prescribed work and properly set for you, of course. And it makes a huge difference. So it does make me want to do VO2 intervals with Ivy though, after hearing that, like that's the ones, those are the ones that she likes. Cause then that would be awesome to have the training partner doing VO2s with you. So, all right. Last one from Noah. Noah says, 5-star podcast on all the platforms, and I've told all my friends to listen. With the holidays soon arriving, I find myself battling anxiety regarding my relationship with food. And this is an older question, obviously, here, because we're past the holidays now, but I thought it was very relevant to cover. So I find myself battling anxiety regarding my relationship with food during this really difficult time. I'm a fundraiser for multiple nonprofits in our region, and as such, I end up attending between 2 to 5 galas per week during November to December, all of which are centered around a dinner that typically leaves me no options for choosing what I eat. I typically end up gaining weight during this time, and while I'm sure the increased workload and late nights increase stress, I know much of it is due to the change in nutrition that I experienced during this time. In a recent episode, you all discussed disordered eating rather openly, and that helped break down barriers I've bumped into when trying to explore and understand my feelings during previous holiday seasons. So now I'd like to ask your opinions and suggestions on what I can do during the holidays in my situation to emerge in January, at the very least, without the self-loathing in which I typically find myself wrapped up. Many thanks and happy holidays. Great question from Noah. Alex, this is squarely within your wheelhouse. What would you say to Noah, a person that maybe is like, this is a bit more of an extreme case, but probably experiencing something that we all experienced on some level at some point throughout the year?
Yeah, I think for sure Noah should know that he's not alone. And it's not just the holidays. I mean, the holidays definitely are a stressful time, but it could be, vacations in July. It could be birthday parties. It could be really anything that kind of triggers that. And it is a very complex issue, and everyone has different reasons for their disordered eating, where it stems from, and their relationship with food. The one thing that I always stress is that food has no moral value. Like, it has nutritional value. It has emotional value, having ties to like tradition and culture and having those feelings of nostalgia. It offers comfort and enjoyment, but it doesn't actually have a moral value. Food itself isn't good. It's not bad. It's just food. But unfortunately, diet culture has really conditioned our brains to view food with a morality lens. So when you get to the holidays or whatever time of the year where you might be triggered and you're really frequently exposed to foods that would be deemed bad, and layering our own relationship with our body and that fear of gaining weight, there's a lot of internal struggles there. And so for those that have this self-loathing from their food choices during the holidays or any time of the year, I think it's really important to start shifting your mindset and telling yourself that you are worthy of feeding your body, whether that's a cookie or a veggie stir fry or anything in between. There's something really special about truly believing that and being able to find that middle ground between eating for health and performance, but also eating like a normal human being, being able to go to your kid's birthday party and have a slice of cake and not feel guilty from it. That's a really important mindset to be in, to just enjoy life.
Yeah, great perspective on it. I think there's also an implied state there. I guess there's an implication that we all need to maintain something, maintain whether it's weight, maintain body composition, and that needs to be the stand. And if we deviate from that, we screwed up. And in most cases, let's be honest, what the social narratives say is if we increase from that, we screwed up. But if we deviate from that and go the other way, we're almost lauded for it. When in reality, we're just putting ourselves in, a lack of, we're in an energy deficit, which has a cascade of negative effects that can come on. So these these narratives that we hear, but then also apply to ourselves, like you're saying, can just unnecessarily overcomplicate this whole thing. I have gotten to the point where I am okay with my body composition fluctuating throughout the year, because the whole concept that I need to be at a specific point just is unrealistic and isn't respectful of life and life's variables, I feel like. And that's really helped me, because then that lets me, like you said, enjoy the cake at the birthday party, do something like that, rather than feel like I'm, overdrafting a deposit or something, or, an account, and I need to make up for it. And that really does help. So no, I'd preach a bit of grace with yourself and appreciation for yourself in this situation and your circumstances. You can't change the circumstances you're in, right? And in addition to that, this isn't inherently, quote, bad, like Alex is saying, for you. No. This could actually be quite beneficial for you. If it's something that gives you the sort of energy that you need, and it's something that's giving you these favorable social experiences, that's allowing you to continue to carry on your professional responsibilities, all of those things sound awesome to me. And those are really big benefits. And it'd be a shame if nutrition was somehow taking the luster away from all of that good stuff that's going on.
Yeah. And if you're going to have a series of holiday parties over the next, over the a few week span, make sure the rest of the day you're eating really well. Don't try and starve yourself so that you're trying to make up for the extra calories that you might eat at that holiday party or that birthday party. You still need to eat sensibly throughout the rest of the day, so then you can just eat a normal portion at that party.
Well, that's why I like the way Noah framed their main question. That makes me confident that they are on their way and have done a lot of the work in changing their relationship with food. That Noah asked not how to go through the holidays with eating less, or how to negate what they ate or diminish what they ate, but instead ask how to come out of it without feeling guilt or self-loathing, as they said. So
and I think three times now we've touched on the relationship with food. Excuse me. And that it's hard not to observe that we all do have a relationship with food, and too often, especially in the case of endurance athletes, it seems to veer negatively. But when Alex talked about just removing morality from the scenario, from the whole equation, which is absolutely necessary. There's no good food, there's no bad food, there's just food. I think this helps us steer clear of the judgment we push on ourselves, and whether we recognize it or not, the judgment we push on others. Because when you deem a food as a bad food and you see someone else eating it, oh man, the guy just eats so much pizza and drinks so much beer. I'm looking at me, but I'm not a bad person, but maybe in that person's eyes I am. And if I get any sense of that exacts a bit of a toll on me. So now I'm feeling bad about my food choices. I see people looking at me and interpret their expression or whatever, their attitude toward me as bad, and it compounds. And if we can just, like she recommended, remove morality from the equation and recognize that, I mean, it could almost be reduced to what's appropriate and what's not appropriate in the moment. There's not a good, there's not a bad. There's just, do I need 5 Twinkies right now? Well, if I'm doing a 5-hour bike ride, maybe. But if I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, probably not. It's not appropriate at the moment.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, beer and pizza, I see the other end of the spectrum too. Like I've talked with athletes who they eat too healthy, where it's a orthorexia problem. And they're, I'm thinking of one particular athlete, like I'm a runner and I'd love to do triathlons, but every time I try and up my training, I can't do it. I don't have the energy for it. And they tell me what they're eating. I'm like, you have to eat more variety and more food. And they're like very resistant. They're not ready for change. And I'm like, well, then, I can't help you at that point. Like you have to be ready to change and up what you're eating and have more variety in order for you to reach those performance goals.
Yeah. Yeah. The last part that I'm thinking of here too is, practically speaking, Noah, you show up at these galas for any of us listening to this, you show up at whatever circumstance it is. When you've fueled well throughout the rest of the day, like Alex said, it is such a cool experience to be able to just have a little bit of everything, have an appropriate portion of the different things. When you come in and you're deprived and you see that, like you're going to grab the thing that is going to just like fill you up most. And in many cases, then that's going to fill you with that balance, is that pendulum's going to swing way on the other side. And then as a result, you're going to miss out on that delicious dessert. You're going to miss out on that side that was really good, something like that. I love being able to go into those situations and being able to like sample everything and enjoy that. And when you come in with just more even keeled, a bit more, like Chad said, you're not passing judgment across the board on yourself and on others. And instead you remove morality from it and you're just approaching it as nourishing yourself to be able to do these things. Boy, it totally changes. Food becomes a lot more delightful. So awesome. Great takeaways on this one. Everybody should go follow Alex on Instagram, Alex Larson Nutrition. She's awesome. That's Larson, Larson, Nutrition. And then also follow all of us on Instagram. But I have 2 main asks. Number 1, go to TrainerRoad.com/podcast and submit questions you have, and also take a survey on there. We are collecting survey responses to help improve the podcast like we do every year. So there's a link to be able to take the survey. Go do that. That would be awesome for us. Number 2 is to share TrainerRoad with your friends, share this podcast with your friends, rate this podcast. We're a bootstrapped company, like I say all the time. This is how we grow, is through this podcast and you sharing with other people. So if you appreciate this and if you appreciate TrainerRoad, if you share it with somebody, that's the best way to show your gratitude for us. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Hi.